right, good afternoon, everybody. We have a lot of folks registered for this event. We'll see. See how many join us today. Thank you so much as everybody's rolling in. We made it. We made it to our final event at long last. So we have you for about an hour, one last hour in the whole forum. I want to say thank you for joining us throughout the forum. My name is Angie Hacker. I'm your statewide best practices coordinator. This is our final event for the 12th annual SEEK Forum. We're calling it Highlights and Horizons, an interactive forum closing, and that's because we hope that you will interact and be part of all of this conversation where we wrap up the event. A couple of Zoom features just to kick us off. You all probably know this by now, but if you could just go ahead and keep yourself muted as we go. Please feel free to use the raise hand feature if you'd like to be unmuted. We were going to go ahead and track any comments or questions in the chat. We do encourage you to use the chat to introduce yourself if you'd like, and encourage you to reach out to other participants. And you can also reach out to myself, Serena, or Gabby with any technical issues that you have. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're here to do today for our final event. The purpose of this final closing is really to help our participants, you, the folks that we have joining us today on the roundtable, will all be reflecting on key forum takeaways and how we move forward into a promising new era for climate equity, health, and prosperity. So I'm going to kick us off first with a little forum wrap up. And then I'm going to be joined by 4 local government leaders for some roundtable reflections. And then we're going to give you guys some space to process your own takeaways in smaller groups and breakout rooms. And finally, before we say a farewell to the forum, we're going to discuss a little bit about how SEEK services can best meet your needs in the future. And I just want to give you a little wrap up here of what we've done together in the last 3 weeks. And fortunately, I'm feeling really inspired by all of this. And that's because we had a lot of content. We had 20 different sessions, a lot of different speakers, 17 different local jurisdictions that have participated as speakers, 8 different CBOs or environmental justice organizations, sharing over 60 best practices. And along with that, like hundreds of useful tips, things that are real world tips for how you can actually perform similar types of strategies or overcome barriers in your neck of the woods as you're working on similar types of initiatives. And we've been really fortunate this year. 591 people have registered and good participation in all of our events. And of course, all of this it has been recorded, will be distributed afterwards. So it's sort of the gift that keeps on giving. And then what we're surprised about is how many more people joined our LinkedIn group, our peer-to-peer network. And so we're going to continue to make that useful to you. We're going to continue to encourage you to participate in that, but we're happy that more of you have throughout the course of this forum. And so over here on the right, that's just a word cloud that is pulled out from all of the session titles, and you can kind of see some themes that have arisen as we've gone throughout the last 3 weeks. Local, obviously, policy, opportunities, challenges. That seems like it sums up where we're at, sort of a balance of the two. Energy, climate, governments, but I'm seeing also here electrification, equity, resilience. And so I do want to make a note here as we're sort of closing off the forum that none of this exchange of knowledge would be possible without our sponsors, including the Tri-County Regional Energy Network, BayREN, and SoCalREN. And we would like to thank our additional sponsors as well, Terra Verde Energy, the Energy Coalition, and TRC Companies. Thank you so much for your sponsorship of this forum. And then one final thank you also to our promotional partners who are probably responsible for bringing you a lot of you here, and we appreciate your continued collaboration. So with that, I am really fortunate to be joined by some amazing local leaders here. So, speaking of our sponsors, we have representatives from each one of the regional energy networks joining us for some roundtable reflections to help us consider some key takeaways from this year's forum. And this gives me a chance to say a special live thank you to the regional energy networks for their leadership and for making the decision to continue all SEEK services from when they were sunsetted last year, including this forum. So I just want to welcome anybody else who's been participating in this forum to just share any appreciation that you'd like in the chat for these sponsors. Say a quick thanks because they made it possible for us to continue to network with each other and share knowledge. So while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our roundtable. So we have 4 amazing local government leading ladies. I like to think of this as a clean energy version of The View. So welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to first introduce Jenny Berg, Assistant Director of Energy Programs, the Energy Programs Manager for the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and with BayREN. Alejandra Tellez she's a program analyst of sustainability programs with the County of Ventura and with 3C REN. Luana Medina, she's the environmental initiatives manager with the County of Los Angeles. And we also have Kate Meese-Wright. She is the executive director of the Local Government Commission, which of course oversees SEEK. So thank you all for being here. And what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see all faces. So if everybody would just go ahead and put their webcams back on. Stop share here. So hi, everybody, and thanks again for being with us. I'm going to go ahead and start with the first question here. We've made it through 3 weeks of hearing from the best and brightest practices in California local clean energy and climate work. So my first question, I'm going to actually start with Alejandra. What promising local innovations or compelling ideas stood out to you at this year's forum?
I mean, I don't think I can just pick one. I think I was super excited to see all the different local governments and the different people participating. It was from like small projects to huge projects, so that was great to see. But I think one idea that I saw that kind of came through in most of the sessions that I attended is the collaboration. I think we speak about local governments, we get to work with each other, but it was great to see planners talk about energy efficiency, people about transportation talk about energy efficiency. Now we're also working with like public safety with public safety shutoffs, wildfires. So it was great that now others are talking about energy efficiency. So it was great to see that idea. And I think that just sets local governments up for future collaboration within our own departments. So I think that's one idea that we were able to highlight of all the different things that our local governments are doing. So hopefully everybody attending can kind of take on that and replicate those things. I think that's one idea that I think we can continue to do. Collaborate within our own departments, within our own counties or cities that we usually don't talk to the planners. So we'll talk to the planners. I think that's one good thing out of the forum.
Yeah, Alejandra, good point. That was one of my takeaways too. It's just about local government collaboration, not just internally, but between each other. That this is a whole new era, I think, for local government collaboration. A little bit different of a dynamic this year than previously with the IOUs, using IOU resources differently, but rather than going to the IOUs for resources, sometimes we're seeing local governments work with each other, work with regional energy networks, work with CCAs, and it's nice to see the self-reliance and local governments growing into their own power.
Yeah, I think we we talk about energy efficiency, residential, and I was like, well, let's talk to our local governments where have to do with housing, who are making those decisions. I think it's kind of just makes us kind of think outside our box.
Thank you, Alejandra. And just want to welcome anybody else from our roundtable panel to chime in as they see fit, if they have anything else to contribute. I think I'll move on to the next question here. So this one, I'm going to start with Kate. Kate, given the additional climate urgency reported by the IPCC this week and the influx of new state and federal resources, what do you think are the top 2 or 3 actions or best practices that local governments should pursue in the next few years to meet their urgent climate and energy goals?
Yeah, thanks, Angie, and great to be with you all. Certainly a harsh report in terms of the reality of where we're at and how much progress we need to make. We know that land use and the built environment impact 2/3 of greenhouse gas emissions in communities. So those are going to be the areas we need to focus on, and specifically transportation and building energy use. So on the transportation side, we heard a lot of great sessions about work that's being done on electric vehicles from cities like Burlingame and Torrance. I think those are great examples. We also need to shift trips. So getting more people out of cars and onto transit, cycling and walking, anywhere where we can invest our state and federal funds in those areas is going to make a big difference. We're also seeing that communities that are more bikeable and walkable have actually fared better during COVID because of the way that impacts obesity levels and other comorbidities. So that's going to be a key strategy. And then, of course, looking at the built environment, looking at reducing travel through compact development and also building decarbonization. So we heard some good sessions around that as well. 15% of our emissions in California are related to heating and cooling residential buildings. So we're not going to be able to get where we need to be without addressing the energy use in buildings. And then finally, what the report told us is we are going to continue to see warming. And we've seen that month after month, hottest month on record. So we are going to need to pursue adaptive strategies as well, like urban greening and cooling surface strategies. So those would be the 3 areas that I would highlight that we really need to focus on.
Thank you, Kate, and thanks for making the connection there with resilience. And I was super happy to see so many local governments in presenting, really trying to consider ways to do mitigation and resilience together, which seems like a big need going forward here. So Jenny, same question about best practices.
I think that I would just kind of add on to what Kate said, and there, I know it was some politicians said, I don't remember who, probably many, is don't let a crisis go to waste. And I think that one of the lessons from this horrible pandemic that we're still living in was that we can reduce GHG emissions, particularly in the transportation sector with more people working from home. So what I'm seeing up here in the Bay Area where I am is that local governments that previously would not allow any of their staff to work from home, nobody had a laptop, now adopting policies that are allowing for hybrid work. So I think that is a best practices with local governments, with staff kind of pushing that and driving that with their executive team or their board members. And it has the effect, not only the non-energy impacts of happier and healthier employees, not having to get stuck in traffic like we have up here, but also the resultant reduction in vehicle miles traveled, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of my add-on to Kate.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. All right, so my third question here is, and actually I think we aren't able to be joined today by Luana, but I actually think SoCalRen's a good example of this. So what are some of the best examples of local programs that are meaningfully weaving our theme, which was weaving recovery, equity, and public health into local energy and climate work? So just looking for some local governments that are really doing that really well. And I mentioned SoCalRen because I've seen lots of presentations about how they are weaving in some really meaningful workforce development initiatives and collaboration with agencies in their region to try to boost recovery in ways that also support their very aggressive energy and climate goals. And I wonder if anybody else wants to share some examples.
I can jump in on this one. I thought that Berkeley's equitable electrification of existing building strategy was pretty inspiring and did a great job at weaving equity and public health into energy and climate work. Specifically, their focus on disadvantaged communities. And I thought it was great how they were actually able to map the potential for displacement and be really targeted around strategies that can, go to buildings first that are in low income areas, but also be really mindful of potential for displacement and other unintended impacts. So I thought that was a great example to lift up. And clearly we know the many health benefits of electrifying buildings.
Yeah, and I think just kind of to add, I think those are great examples, but I think it was also great to see EJs and CBOs part of our panels and part attending for the rest of our local governments who are not there yet, like, Berkeley and SoCal REN, that they can learn that they need to kind of invest in equity and environmental justice since the beginning of program design. So that was good to see, and for us to kind of learn how do we do that? How do we become one of those programs that we can highlight? So it was great to hear from the EJs and the CBOs themselves.
Yeah, and I would just say that the connection between health and energy is now much more part of the conversation. I know that within BayREN, we have a new partnership with the folks working on Asthma Start. So it's just kind of the classic example of siloed agencies, siloed funding, but there's such a great connection between those two, important aspects.
And I think this forum has been a really good example of starting to see some silos breaking down. And we're going to need a lot more of it, but I'm really seeing maybe more than the usual suspects showing up, doing this work in different ways, knowing that local governments do all sorts of things, from affordable housing to fire management to agricultural management, land use, emergency management, economic development, facility management, health and safety. I feel like the professionals in those departments and divisions are starting to become part of the team. And I just see that as a huge paradigm shift and a big opportunity in the future, just to see how those folks running those functions can consider not just decarbonization, but also can consider their plans for services in light of the reality of a future that's already seeded for disaster. And so I see us all the folks here playing a key role in leading those folks in the right direction. Right. Thank you, ladies. And my fourth question here is, in 2021, what are some of the biggest challenges to achieving our local energy and climate goals? And I'll just open this up to whoever feels compelled.
I think for years, funding's always the question that comes up to local governments. And I think funding is still, the number one challenge, but I think this year is going to be different. That how are we going to be ready for the funding coming down? I think, we see it with the new reports, new infrastructure bill state, there's funding coming, but we have to be ready for it. So I think it's funding, but in a different way. We have to be able to do that collaboration and be ready to apply. So funding, in the sense that we have to be ready to apply for that funding coming down.
Yeah, I would say inertia is a major challenge. There are a lot of people, corporations benefiting from the status quo. So it's going to take massive investment, which, we are in a unique window in that sense, and political will, disruptive thinking to really see the large scale change that we need and at the pace that we need it.
And I would add shifting priorities. If you think about what's going on right now in our state, it's wildfires. So the priority will, of course, shift to not only fighting the fires, but to help those communities recover. So it's, there's a focus on one thing, and then with all of the climate crises, the priority naturally shifts.
Yeah. Yes, and just to kind of tag on to what Alejandra said on funding, it's like funding comes with responsibility to be cost effective, and that hasn't changed, but how we talk about cost effectiveness is changing. And so maybe with the changes with the CPUC regulations around what cost effectiveness really looks like, or requirements for cost effectiveness, we might see ourselves having a little flexibility to not just measure kilowatt hours and carbon, but to measure also things like how we're impacting people. And we're also looking at, how do we right size these systems? The cost effectiveness becomes really important when we're looking at how to design systems that really meet the community's needs, not just for resilience, not just for energy loads, but for, for safety for people. Great, you guys. Last question here. What makes you the most excited for the future of California local energy and climate work?
Well, I would just say all the inspiring best practices that we heard throughout our multiple sessions. And as we've alluded to, I mean, we just have this really rare window where we have a state budget surplus and we're going to have federal funding that's coming in. So it's really unprecedented, the level of investments we're going to be able to make in this work. So I think we do have the opportunity to move from incrementalism to, really large scale change, and hopefully create some proof of concepts that can show the need to invest in some of these programs moving forward. And I would just say, I would have never imagined that the state of California would have $3.7 billion available for just resilience over the next 3 years. So, we are seeing major shifts, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think, just the innovation coming, I think, with local governments, and we saw that in the presentations. We tie the innovation coming through our local governments and the ideas with the funding coming down. I think it's going to be exciting to see what comes out of that.
And I guess I would just add the feeling that I always have when I leave a SEEK forum, which I'm not having because we've had to be on our computer, is just kind of to Alejandra's point, is the creativity and the really hard work of local government staff across the state that have all sorts of obligations, but yet still have the commitment to working on climate issues within their communities.
And Luana, I'm so glad you're here. If you want to chime in, feel free to. I'm just going to sort of follow up to Jenny's point and saying, not just to see what local governments are doing for themselves and each other, but I also want to I feel inspired knowing that there are so many organizations committed to supporting local governments, helping them do the work that is sometimes difficult to do individually or in-house. And so I see that happening more and more. Some of the investments that are being made is taking some weight off local government shoulders and providing some real assistance.
Definitely. Thank you. And I apologize for running late. The county, as many of you know, is facing the challenge of the state mandates, and now we're implementing it within the county of Los Angeles that all employees be vaccinated. So we're kind of juggling that challenge with, environmental sustainability, health and safety. So, I would definitely say for best practices for local government is, to seek out resources that are available to supplement your staff, because we are juggling multiple hats at this time. So, yeah.
Yes. All right, ladies, thank you so much for being here. Is there any final comments anybody wants to make? Any last inspirations? All right.
Just excited to hear what you guys all do over the next year, and we'll see you next year at the next SEEK forum, hopefully in person.
Thank you all again for your leadership and participation. And now we're going to move into our next segment, which was basically you all get to do similar types of processing. So let me go ahead and try and share my screen here again. All right. So our next piece here is breakout sessions, and it's pretty straightforward. We're going to break out into 3 groups and give you all a chance to kind of process some of your own takeaways. And there are 4 questions. Each breakout room will have a facilitator, and you'll end up in a mural room where you can actually be plotting your own responses and discussing amongst a smaller group. So the first question is, just keeping our theme in mind, which is weaving recovery, equity, and public health into local energy and climate work. what are the most promising local innovations and compelling ideas that you heard at this year's forum? And then the second one there is reflecting back on, I don't know if you remember Alana Matthews in the opening plenary. She led us through an exercise where we closed our eyes and we had to try to imagine a clean, healthy, thriving community. And then we had to imagine who were the vulnerable populations and how we can transfer the benefits to them. And so this is an opportunity to think back about that exercise and what solutions may have come to you over the course of the last 3 weeks to help us realize that vision. The third question here, in 2021, what are the biggest challenges to achieving our local energy and climate goals? And 4, this will help segue into the last part of this conversation we're going to have, which is what can SEEK do better to support you in the future? All right, so if Gabby, I think somebody has already probably provided the link in the chat to get you to the mural board. So please follow us there and then you'll receive a breakout notice. Right. Hey, I want to thank everybody for participating in that. John, does it look like most people have come back out or are we waiting? Or Gabby?
Looks like we're still waiting on a few more people.
Okay, well, good, because I'm going to take a minute just to kind of be reviewing what's here on the on our mural.
Yeah. I think everyone should be back in just about a minute.
Okay. Maybe John, you can let me know when it looks like everybody's back. So thanks for hanging with us, everybody. We're just waiting for everybody to get out of their breakout rooms. All right, hi everybody. So I'm just kind of looking at everybody's responses in the breakouts, seeing how we might be able to sum up a few things before we transition to our last portion of this event. So on this first question where folks are asked, were asked about local innovations that really stood out to them. In our group, we talked quite a bit about data, not just, we talked about data, geodata in terms of layering the community's needs on top of energy needs and the ability to do that better to target our programs and make decisions and even try to address things like systemic racism through our program. So that has all been sort of illuminating. Let's see, breakout 2 looks like highlighted taking a holistic view of the entire climate adaptation and mitigation issues, right? So trying to bring these two worlds together. Let's break some silos and do some things together. Breakout room 3, know your stakeholders, first point of contact before deciding if project is feasible. Okay, so more about engagement, bringing the right folks to the table, community resilience hubs. We talked about that in my group too, bringing public health and equity components. Yeah, I think we're gonna be hearing a lot more about resilience hubs. This next question was on Alana Matthews' exercise and just how we're envisioning achieving this clean, healthy, thriving community for all, even vulnerable populations. Let's see, breakout room 2 said targeted programs to DACs. And let's see, this is a good one from breakout 3, although I can't read it all. Let's see. Being able to visualize both a clean, healthy, thriving community and vulnerable communities separately, we were able to dive in deeper. 2 visualizations. Takes all stakeholders to be vulnerable and honest to understand what each community needs, right? So real talk within communities. Thank you for that. Let's see, biggest challenges. We talked just about balancing multiple priorities, and breakout room 2 said the need for credible mandates that drive early compliance. Okay, so rather than voluntary actions. And then finally here, and this is going to be a segue into our last portion of the our event here, is how we can support you better. Well, let's see what breakout room 2 had to say. I'm just reading the green parts that have been highlighted for me. Help local governments tell their story to elected officials to get support for initiatives. So storytelling. So sounds like getting the attention of the elected officials. And I get it because we spend a lot of time trying to arm you all to be able to get the work done on the ground and move forward, but you need the buy-in of your elected officials. Okay. I am going to take us back to our slide deck. Thank you so much for participating in all that, everyone. We have a little bit more interaction here to handle. So let's get my screen back up. Can somebody confirm that they can still see my screen?
Yes.
All right, I see nods. Thank you. Okay, so speaking of Seek Services, this is an opportunity for me to clarify a little bit about what it is that we do. And so let me see here. So like I said, we're trying to arm those of you in the trenches doing the work as best as we can from the outside. And one of my goals and the team's goals of this year is to really help you find the help you need when you need it. That's the struggle with forums like this. There's so much good information, but you're not working on all these initiatives right now. You might later. Where can you find the information when you need it? And so we are aware that you all often need guidance on key topics from experts and peers. And so we've done some things that we think can help you find that kind of guidance, including we have available technical assistance. So we have a whole webpage devoted to it. We're asking you to, whenever you'd like, you can submit a request through a form for technical assistance, which will come to me. And what I do is if I can't answer it, I try to bird dog it and I find somebody who can. So you can make a request to me anytime, or I can point you to a resource that we've already developed. I also want to point you to a directory, which I'll show you on the website really quickly, but we have a directory where folks have actually signed on to be technical assistants, meaning they are already resourced to provide technical assistance services to local governments to help you with your energy and climate work. So you can go there anytime. You don't even have to go through me and find somebody who's already resourced to provide that kind of assistance. And the other thing it offers is people that have signed up that are willing to provide peer knowledge. So like the folks that are in this forum that are doing interesting things, some people say, yeah, I'm willing to sort of mentor a friend or share with my peers, and you can reach out to them and learn how they did what they did. And so that directory is able to be filtered by topic, and you can sort it in different ways. With that, I want to ask folks who are here and have been participating in this session, in this whole forum, please do register, participate in that directory. If you have something that you think other local governments can benefit from and you're willing to share knowledge, we would love to add you to that list. Secondly, we offer educational events. So the forum is one of them. And of course, this will all be available online afterwards, all the recordings and session materials, but we have roundtables, we do webinars, and we're always looking for good content. And so if there's something that you really would like to see a webinar on, more educational events, let me know. You can contact me anytime. I'm going to share my email address at the end of this presentation. We also provide best practices, and so I did see that come up in the breakout rooms, more examples, and so write-ups, case studies. We have that. We have a whole web pages devoted to recordings where we have interviewed folks that have done interesting things. And most recently, we've developed a database, again, sortable, filterable, by best practices, and those 60 best practices that have come out of this forum, thanks to all the team's work, have already been dropped into that database so that you can access them. So really, like when you need to find, hey, how do I find, I don't know, a reach code for electrification? Go there, maybe you can find what you're looking for, find the right examples, and see who else to ask for questions. Finally, the LinkedIn peer-to-peer network is another way for us to help you continue to network with each other. And so continue to participate in that. We'll be continuing to sort of promote folks' participation there. Secondly, we know that you're looking for ways to pay for your initiatives. This is a new focus for us this year. And one of the things we've done is build a funding resources website, which I'm going to, if I have a moment, just to show you where these things are on our website. There is a place where you can actually look at funding best practices, which means how are local governments internally funding these initiatives and finding external resources. And on the subject of external resources, grants and things, we have developed our own database of programs that is a broad look at all the different ways that initiatives like yours can be funded. So I'll point you in that direction once I'm just done with this slide. And then finally, we know that to keep up on, you're looking to keep up to date on industry news, and you don't have time to go scouring everything. And so we're doing that on your behalf. You see it in the weekly update. You see it summarized in a calendar of events. We also provide the currents publication, and we've added to that a Coping with Crisis series to try to really tie into what might matter for you during COVID recovery and other crises. So let's do a time check here, but yeah, I have a moment to show you our website, which is what I wanted to do here. And I think you all are familiar with our website. What I wanted to point you to is best practices under resources, where you have recordings, case studies, and here's that database I mentioned. Okay. All you have to do, you can search by keyword or by topic, and it will filter for you best practices that are on the subjects that I'm sure you're interested in, from disadvantaged communities to energy resilience, climate planning. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is our technical assistance page. So if you have a request for technical assistance, you can hit this button, fill out a form, or just contact me directly. You can look at previous technical assistance responses here. And then if you do want to join the directory or view the directory, that's down here at the bottom where you can go access those other technical assistance resources. And then finally, I wanted to show you funding resources, also under the resource tab. This is our brand new website. Looking for input if you have it, but you can see featured active funding opportunities, where we are trying to scan for things that we think you might be eligible for and interested in to help you pursue your goals. Down here is where you'll find the how-to guides, so ways to get funded both internally, what are internal funding best practices and external funding best practices, and all sorts of categories. So just some ideas of places to go to look for ways to pay for things. And then if you want to find external funding, we point you to all sorts of databases, including our own. And I'm not going to go through this much, but this is a pretty extensive tool where you can also filter by similar categories to look for the kinds of funding that you might be looking for. So these are some new ways that we're trying to provide support for you. And let me go ahead and get myself up and running again. That's not what I want to share. All right. So I just have one more minute or so left. Yeah. All right. This is what happened when you shuffle around a little too much. Okay. So we just have a couple more minutes, and the last thing I really want to do here is just ask you to fill out one poll. So if I can get Gabby to launch the poll, this is just for you to respond and let us know two questions. One is select the top five areas your agency needs external assistance on by topic. And the second question is select the top 3 SEEK services your agency would find valuable in 2021 and beyond. So topic and service. We'll just give you a minute to finish that. We'll share the results. And as you're doing that, you have other ideas, feel free to drop something in the chat. Other ideas for things we should be focused on as your SEEK program, as your service provider. All right. So I think we should wrap up the poll in maybe another 10 seconds. All right, let's see results. Building decarbonization and funding opportunities are the top, it looks like, and a lot of interest in DAC engagement. Everybody loves the forum, and everybody needs funding opportunities. Also, like best practices examples are up there too. So thank you for that. I really appreciate everybody's input on this. We're going to take your input on the polls, anything you've offered in the chat, and then you can also direct any ideas or feedback to me directly. And this is my opportunity just to say a big thank you to, again, our sponsors, everybody who's participated, our speakers, for you, for continuing to show up and attend and participate and provide your own information. And a big thank you to the team, the SEEK team, who behind the scenes has done all of the work. Serena Sword, Kelsey Wolf Cloud, that dash is in the wrong place, Gabriella Yamur, and John Vandevort. Again, contact us anytime if we can provide support, and don't forget to fill out your post-forum survey one last time for a chance to enter the raffle. And with that, we will welcome you back next year, and stay tuned for lots more educational opportunities through SEEK. And thanks again for all of your participation.